I keep seeing on my Twitter timeline, Chapter 2 Season 2 was some of the best seasons in this chapter. But was it actually that good, or was it all just nostalgia? I think I can speak on behalf of the majority of the community and say on the first day of a new season, looking at how the map has changed is one of the most exciting parts of a new update. The Season 2 map just added to what the Season 1 map had all around, adding 5 different new POIs. In the northwest of the map, they added Shark. In the northeast, they added the Yacht. In the southwest, they added the Rig. In the center of the map, they added the Agency. And on the far east of the map, they added the fan favorite, the Grotto. These weren't huge changes, but at the time, the map was relatively new. However, this now meant there was 18 named POIs on the map, in comparison to the current 14 in the Season 7 map. This season is one of the fan favorites map from Chapter 2 because there were so many different spots that you could land out and so many different areas were viable. I'm definitely sad that a lot of these places have since disappeared, and it seems like this current map is a lot more difficult to land at and have enough loot at than the map was all the way back 5 seasons ago. The season also implemented a ton of new key features along with a cool new map, such as Shakedown, which was introduced in this season too.
Where's your motherfucking teammate? Where's your motherfucking teammate?
Where he
there
at,
he is.
There he go.
He coming.
Along with bosses and henchmen, vaults, and throwable consumables. And on top of this, mythics, which we'll come back to later. The loot pool was also changing pretty rapidly. The weapons that had been vaulted from the previous season included the Trap, which was notoriously frustrating, Compact SMG, another spam weapon, and the Bolt Sniper. So the vaulted list looked really nice. Until you looked over at the unvaulted list, and you saw that all of the suppressed weapons, which necessarily isn't so bad, but also the minigun and the heavy sniper were unvaulted. So that was a lot of changes, a lot good and a lot bad, so this season was definitely a lot different from Chapter 2 Season 1. On a positive note, there was 5 new POIs introduced on the map. You can now shake down your opponents to find where their teammates were. You can now throw consumables to your teammates. The Traps was vaulted, same with the P90 and the Sniper Rifle, so a ton of really good stuff. But what about the bad stuff? Well, bosses and henchmen caused mythics to be absolutely brutal this season. These mythic weapons included the Midas drum gun, the Brutus minigun, Sky's grappler, Sky's assault rifle, TNTina's Kaboombo, and the Meowsicle's Piao Piao rifle, which is a hilarious name. There was also the Deadpool's hand cannon that was later introduced, which healed you when you hit damage on opponents. All of these, really outside of the hand cannons, were incredibly powerful and 100% overpowered. For the TNT's Boombo, you could combine it with a heavy sniper, shoot through a wall, and get guaranteed Storm Surge tags, which is what a ton of players did in the FNCS finals. The Grappler was an infinite grappler, so if you landed Shark, not only did you get this, but you got the Sky's Assault Rifle, which was also a mythic, which was, again, still nutty. Remember, at this time, there was a 2x headshot multiplier still on all automatic weapons, so this thing absolutely shredded. This did 37 to the body and 74 to the head, which means if you triple dink someone, they were dead from no matter what HP. Same with the Midas drum gun, same with the Brutus minigun. These were incredibly powerful, probably the most powerful weapons we've seen implemented into any season. Combine this with the new linear and exponential settings that were put into the game at that time, pre-nerf, and this was not a fun time for a lot of players. You gotta consider there's also a vaults round that had a high spawn rate for scars and miniguns. This meant that it was controller season over and over. It was very, very common in duos for you to get double sprayed by miniguns, by scars, and all of these mythics and combined, and just to basically just lose your game out purely due to spray. Despite everyone thinking this season was so fun, which we'll come to a lot later on, the fights this season were really frustrating. Players heavy sniping into your box, spraying you down with ARs, another player spraying you down with a minigun, maybe mythic, maybe not. The mythic drum gun as well. Fighting the Shark players who had the infinite grapple and could always take height on you, plus the mythic scar. This was not a fun season to fight in, unless obviously you had these weapons. But let's dive a little bit deeper into the vaults, because these had a guaranteed launch pad in them, 5 spread across the map. This meant that all of the teams who landed in these spots not only had mythic weapons, but guaranteed rotations, meaning that they could rotate wherever they wanted in stacked tournaments, and they could hold any teams who didn't have mobility, so the balance of this was incredibly off if you didn't land at one of these spots. There was a savior, however, for this season: the tournaments. weekly cash cups that were solos and duos, the FNCS, which was fully duos, and then of course the FNCS Invitational as well. You also can't remember that nearly all of these, except for the FNCS Invitational, were split 50-50 onto console and PC, which meant that anyone on any input could enjoy. Now, I don't necessarily think this was actually a good idea for the long run, but it was a good test, and the console players definitely got a lot of enjoyment this season. Unfortunately, the main tournament of FNCS Duos for the season didn't even have a broadcast, as this was kind of one of the dark periods where the broadcast was not going on. Luckily, there was the savior of the FNCS Invitational, which did have an official broadcast, which was really good. To fill in for the no broadcast on the FNCS Duos, Shio and Bola did their own broadcast, which was very interesting and very entertaining as well. So we did get some coverage, but it was definitely a shame not to have an official broadcast during this time. I think when people look back mainly at this season, they have to think about it in two different ways. This was a really fun arena season. When there's a lot of broken items such as the mythics like this, these really hot drop POIs, there's a lot of fun to have in arena just by stomping over people, getting a ton of eliminations, and using the really overpowered weapons. However, when it comes to playing high level competitions like the FNCS Duos, these things don't actually form a very high level competition and eventually end up making people frustrated. I think one of the reasons that people thought so fondly of this season for competitive was because there was such a large variety of tournaments to be out there. The daily cups, for example, were on, what I guess was purely because a lot of people were home due to COVID, which meant that the player numbers were up, so they got those tournaments. I don't think that dailies will come back for that reason only, but the huge amount of tournaments that were on, you can't deny, were extremely fun to play. But honestly, the meta for high level tournaments was not very good. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned a lot. Peace.